Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review, your source for an economic perspective on salient current events that impact our public policy, economic outcomes, and our overall society, with a focus on identifying ideas that will generate the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. Please like and subscribe. Welcome, my name is Christopher Peter. Regardless of what type of organization you lead, the goal is to operate free of issues. Start and end each day with your organization's integrity intact and no questions lingering about the quality of product, service, or the people delivering both to the end users. Ideally, you will end each day with a bit more trust from your customers, workers, and partners. No one wants any form of scandal, any issue that they have to address about a product defect that potentially caused harm or damaged the reputation, or a personal embarrassment, which makes partners rethink being associated with your brand because of the person's employment, or workers wanting to remain employed because of how they feel about the person involved. Scandals can create major distractions from the work that is being done, the value created, and the true intentions of everyone involved. And we have seen some recent scandals create some unwanted headlines and some viral moments. Things that make decision-makers' job a whole lot harder or board members if the decision-makers are at the source of the scandal. So let us take a moment to discuss some of these scandals that have been in the news lately. The biggest social media scandal is probably what took place at a Coldplay concert, where a tech company's chief executive officer and their chief people officer were caught in a couple's embrace on the kiss cam at a Coldplay concert. Both are married, but not to each other. So an act of infidelity was caught by what amounts to a media trick to get people to show public displays of affection for the crowd to react to. As a result of the images, both were placed on administrative leave with the chief executive reportedly resigning. There is a good chance neither one survives this and both may have a chance at a real relationship once their significant others probably end their marriage with such a public display that must be extremely embarrassing, as well as the other footage that came out. From simply a business perspective and how they need to get to the other side of this, the loss of two key executives and possibly a third is quite a damaging event. The person setting the direction of the organization and who has grown it over quite some time is now no longer going to be at the helm. The person you hired last year to identify quality talent and devise the strategy to staff your company will be gone as well. And there will probably be a host of organizations that will exploit this scandal in their annual training, exaggerating the impact of inter-office relationships. Keep in mind that this was clearly consensual and not one of the issues of forced office encounters, but it does raise issues on office romances that become deemed inappropriate because the company does not want the risk. This happens when people cannot be professional and separate personal feelings. Understandably, companies try to nip this in the bud. The economics of this scandal could be brand damage, which obviously was a concern with the statements that came out afterwards. A people-centric company may be too centric if every worker is canoodling with each other. There must be some boundaries and also some clear governance, which is questionable if there were other members of leadership there, painting a picture that ethical behaviors do not really matter to the organization. Most people will be drawn to the infidelity aspect, but the real issue is the corporate governance and lack of ethics. People cannot always control who they develop feelings for, but organizations must do what it can to ensure that there are clear policies that avoid issues that may arise from it. Organizations are not workers' daycares, nightclubs, or summer camps. They are operations that create value for customers and society, opportunities for workers, and a whole lot more at times. When people create situations that may make them biased or unable to make business-first decisions, then the organizations may be harmed if their customers, workers, or other stakeholders are unfairly treated and need to be compensated for it. The costs of risky behaviors and clouded decision-making is not always thought about before acts are done. What if the relationship went sour and each party started acting in their own emotional interests? People could be wrongly terminated, denied opportunity, or stereotyped because of an emotional decision. How many people actually know what the astronomer company actually does? Many probably learned about the company from the social media clip, but it is a prominent data management company, who now has the incident as part of its Google search, just what its chief marketing officer envisioned, and who is now tasked to turn this incident into something positive. Might be a good opportunity to use the notoriety to formally introduce the organization to society. Think about the customers on a going forward basis. How many prospective organizations were ready to commit to doing projects with them based on relationships or their perception of the company's future? There is a bit of uncertainty now. When the person at the top of the pyramid changes, there is no guarantee that the company remains steady. It may change for the better or lose its innovation and edgy appeal. The economic impact can be hard to quantify because you cannot always understand the brand effect until later. The board seems to be doing what it should at the moment, and we will see what the future may hold for this company, which is only a decade old. Power can cause people to behave differently than they otherwise would. For many people, they are simply just another person that you know, work with, or interact with. They may be nice or personable, but you may just see them as another person in your sphere. But how people look at others can change when they now have the power to change your life or situation. And also people change when they now have control and the potential to coerce others to do things. I am not going to get into the legal aspect of the lawsuit that FS1's leadership team settled. You have most likely seen the coverage, like I have, on many networks and social media channels. So, I am not going to regurgitate the accusations. The company found it in their best interest to settle it rather than fight it out in court, just like other networks have done with lawsuits. Rather look at the downstream impact of the situation. 3 shows have been canceled and probably about 9 or 10 stars of the network are now out of a day job, as well as a host of staff members who will probably be out of work. And only 2 were even mentioned around the controversial lawsuit, but the network reportedly ended anything created by the former executive. During my brand review of ESPN, I remarked that the closest competitor to the worldwide leader in sports was FS1, because it had the reach and potential to provide an alternative to the slate of programming that many criticize as slanted to the left and too hysteria-driven. But that took a hit when so many voices that were supposed to provide a sports-centered conversation were put out to pasture. Maybe some stick around. Seems like they appear to be doing what I suggested and embrace the new media environment, as they have reached a partnership agreement with Dave Portnoy and his Barstool brand, and are now rethinking their content strategy. They have Colin Cowherd in his show, which is what you want sports talk to be. Very insightful at times and entertaining. While I may not always agree with his takes, he does seem to not be flippant and is fact-based. They still will have First Things First with Nick Wright, Chris Broussard, and Kevin Wildes, a debate show that has entertaining but reasoned conversations, well-balanced commentary and thought-out segments, with some mixtures of gimmicks. Still, the Super Bowl celebrations following my Eagles beating the Chiefs is something I can watch over and over again. Probably already watched it 5 or 6 times. The big problem is that this created a situation where a network that was making an attempt to compete lost 60% of its lineup because of a settlement that resulted from the alleged behaviors of a former executive. In a market that is shifting greatly, it is creating more change at an organization that already needed to change to compete. Maybe this is the clean slate that may make future decisions easier. Its top competitor has its own issues with controversy, but none that are tied directly to its core. It was able to disassociate with the Shannon Sharpe controversy that was reportedly recently settled. Still seems to have some controversies in how it can mesh the different personalities and egos, but it has a sizable market lead that will be hard to overcome. The market for sports media is something I will talk about in a future episode. CBS announced recently that it is ending Stephen Colbert's run on The Late Show, which has the left annoyed, like everything else. The reasoning the network gave was the financial situation of the show, losing $40 million and employing 200 people for one show alone. It denied that this was a result of its recent settlement. Personally, I am not a fan of the typical late shows that run following the late-night news on ABC, CBS, or NBC. Jimmy Fallon can be entertaining at times, but Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert have been unwatchable for some time. Never found Colbert entertaining, even during his time on Comedy Central. In this day and age, the night shows are really pointless. Jay Leno and David Letterman were must-see television back in the day. Their monologues and conversations were great and consistent. Conan O'Brien was entertaining and creative. These were entertainment shows that may deal with politics, but never lost the entertainment value. There is a cost when a business entity is unable to separate its core vision from politics. Regardless of your political views, you should be able and willing to connect with the broadest populations in the market in order to maximize your economic outcomes. As Michael Jordan once said, Republicans buy sneakers too. People have differences of political opinions all the time. There were plenty of fans of Jay Leno or David Letterman who were conservative Republicans who knew that these two probably supported opponents of their preferred candidates. But there was never a divide or casting away of the audience. Conservatives can take a joke and like a good quip. Kimmel and Colbert at times show partisan sentiments that are not entertaining, but purposefully divisive and not based on facts, evidence, or data. Simply parroting political hysteria. And that generally does not do well in the market, as even center-left will tune you out as well. They have lost the entertainment value as they have purposefully crossed the entertainment politics line because they think their views are more important than everyone else. As a result, you can see that their ratings are not doing well. Sure, you can blame the overall decline that is taking place with the transition from television to streaming, but it has been declining for late shows for a while, mainly for these 3 stations. Fox News and others have ratings that far exceed these shows, so it is not completely an extinct market. A business should have a broad appeal and needs to be careful when entering the world of politics. These hosts may consider themselves comedians or entertainment, but the shows they represent with many staff members off camera are a business. Some business entities can do it appropriately. We saw many media personalities dip their toes in politics and gain traction and grow their audiences. How? I believe it is a result of the quality of messaging. It is one thing to share your political feelings and another to simply criticize the person who views these issues a different way. Demonizing people because they disagree with you is petulant. Spewing partisan parroted rhetoric is not generally received by either conservatives or liberals alike. I believe that either side can respect if someone gives a genuine statement or opinion without what amounts to bullying or coercion, especially when there is no accountability if your views are proven wrong. Many people look the other way when others close to them disagree and they are wrong, but it is hard when one is strongly condemning a group of people simply because they disagree with you. In this controversy, one has to look at the undeniable fact: a loss of $40 million. Companies do not like to lose money. If you are losing money and shrinking your audience, then there is no question they have to make a change, especially if the brand has narrowed its ability to appeal to the broadest market segment. Consider that Colbert was reportedly making $16 million. If the other 199 people were making in the six figures, CBS would still be at a loss if they all worked for free in the next year. From a financial standpoint, there was a need to find a solution that has a bigger potential audience and can increase revenues.
My name is Jennifer. Part of the problem with having an extroverted style of leadership is that one is encouraged to create before something of value is delivered. That may be very effective in the world of consumer goods or a sales-driven environment, but it can be somewhat dangerous in the world of politics and governance, where results matter a bit more. For example, we see Apple say that every iPhone has the most features that an iPhone has ever had. Not the most features on the market. But the latter is probably how most viewers see the iPhone because of select wording and how Americans interact with marketing. Worst case scenario, a person gives a bad review or returns the product. In politics, when you claim or infer that you have something that turns out to not be true, it can be quite damaging, and may be a complete distraction that clouds the view by some people of what the bigger picture truly is. And that is the problem that the Trump administration is dealing with right now, as online conservatives are raising issues with the delay in releasing the files surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. Overall, the Trump administration has been fairly more transparent than most recent administrations. They have declassified documents like the JFK files and a host of others that many thought would always live in the lore of government secrecy. But the files of a former financier, Democrat donor, and accused pedophile have yet to be released. There have been names already released of people who have visited the controversial and now infamous island known as Epstein Island, where many of the crimes occurred. We know of people who have known the financier and been pictured with him. But the public still does not know who is truly involved in the crimes that took place on that island. A problem with the narrative was Attorney General Pam Bondi reportedly claiming there was a client list, and it turns out that one may not actually exist. Based on the recent report, there is no client list that has names with people who can be credibly tied to the sex crimes that occurred. So the public is wondering how this can be. The only two people involved that were criminally charged was Jeffrey Epstein himself, who committed suicide in prison with many suspicious surrounding circumstances, and his mistress Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Some still question whether Epstein really committed suicide. Although, Kash Patel, speaking on the Joe Rogan Experience, said that he reviewed the tape and no one else could have been in the room. But the editing of the tape and missing footage, along with guards reportedly asleep, and other weird coincidences make online journalists skeptical. And it does not help that everyone seems to be making statements that just add to the doubt. So, in order to try to eliminate the skepticism, President Donald Trump has ordered the release of all credible information that can be released. There is a need to not release the videos of the actual crimes and information that may harm victims. The need for information by content creators is not a higher priority than protecting the rights and well-being of those victimized. But there is some level of reasonability in the argument of accountability and transparency. And we need to stop the misinformation and disinformation around the horrible events. People trying to prod the administration by claiming President Trump is in the files is a bit of stretch. Look at the lengths that the Biden administration went to try to put Trump in prison. Do you really think they would have not released the information if they found it? They reportedly redirected the focus of a significant number of men and women in the FBI to focus on prosecuting Trump. So one would reasonably ignore the rumors about that. Trump has acknowledged meeting him and there are pictures. There are pictures with Clinton. And Bill Gates acknowledged having dinner a number of times with him. But there does not seem to be anything that ties any prominent person to the files yet, which can be troubling to the online community given the notoriety of the case. The reality is that Jeffrey Epstein was a high-profile finance person with apparent ties to many global figures, as a financial person would have. That does not mean that everyone who met him or did business with him is connected to the dark side. There could be some legitimate business-only transactions that happened without any knowledge by the client of who they truly were dealing with. So there is no real legitimate reason to create suspicion around people who simply did regular business with him. But people want to see justice happen, and it can be deflating when the main perpetrator commits suicide to avoid justice. So now people have an unquenchable thirst that cannot reasonably be satisfied. There may not be a reasonable answer that online personalities will accept. From polling, the public is not really consumed as some may make it seem. Not sure these people are truly concerned other than the need for clickbait or to fuel their political agenda and audience growth. The major problem is that this creates a distraction for what is truly going on in society, providing a potential for narratives that Trump's political opponents may use to oppose the president's agenda that is seemingly delivering positive results and proving naysayers wrong. The tariffs are really not proving harmful, and the immigration enforcement is reversing the dynamic of the job market, where Americans are now dominating growth rather than foreign-born workers. The push for efficiency in government is shifting the dogma in our nation's capital, where slowing the growth of spending is now being replaced with cutting excess spending. The reshaping of the federal government will finally address the fiscal crisis that both sides fear. But not enough to have cut spending in the past. America was promised a golden age, and it is appearing that it may happen. But distractions surrounding a dead pedophile are not what an administration wants to see. Especially if it is caused by misstatements by staff, who are performing quite effectively otherwise.
A big thank you to all of you who experienced the Christopher Peter Review, the podcast episodes, and the blog. Please remember to continue to visit www.crcreview.com for more content, and do me a favor and like and subscribe.